Did I have you talked to Patty about the Immanuel, the cross-cultural, the cultural thing? Okay, so this is just totally cool. Let's see. I think the written version of this on the Immanuel website, on the Getting Started page, there's like a draft version of the whole book, and there's several supplementary chapters I've written after the book was published. One of those is this story in written version, but I'll give you the 5-minute summary. So, mission team in remote Asia, area with multiple tribal cultures. So we've got 5 or 6 different ancient, complex, different tribal groups with language and cultural issues that are complex. And some of the folks who are more familiar with Asia, tonal stuff like for the Euro folks, it's just you think you're saying pass the carrots and you're saying can I kiss your wife? Or, I mean, because there's like little and also cultural issues. There's just all kinds of ways you can cause a whole lot of trouble unintentionally. And this team, very sophisticated, very aware of all this, and working hard to study. I mean, they did their homework. They worked hard to be aware of and try to avoid any known stumbling blocks for language and culture. But even with all that, just a huge problem for their whole work was on a regular basis tripping over language or cultural barriers, having some conflict or misunderstanding, take some weeks or months to fix it. Big problem. So they started using Immanuel, and what they discovered is as soon as they could help the person connect with Jesus, as soon as the person's interacting directly with Jesus, one is he seemed to know the language and the culture, so he did not stumble over any of the language or cultural, the things that the human team would bump into. As soon as the person was interacting directly with Jesus, he would just miss them all, which is an interesting data point that tells you this is really Jesus, not just your imagination. Because if I don't know about this stuff, my imagination won't know more. I mean, it doesn't make sense that if I'm just suggesting this, that my suggestion, Jesus, would be way more skillful and intelligent than me, right? Yeah. So when they interact directly with Jesus, he misses the language and the cultural problems. Then, as I was talking to this person to write this chapter, and we were emailing back and forth to kind of clarify all this, she noticed 2 other layers. So the second layer is that as soon as the dynamics where the local people could feel, instead of, oh, you're the wealthy, educated Westerner who's coming in and telling me what to do. It's like, no, you're just helping me talk to Jesus. Jesus is important. He's the important person who's in charge, and you're just the assistant. The dynamics of that were much less complicated, much less likely to bump into all kinds of things of you think you're better than I am. I mean, like, it just shifted the system dynamics in a very simple, huge way that was just like wonderfully helpful. And the third thing is, she said, even if we had already, like we were interacting with a group or with a person and we had already made some mistakes and there was already tension and they were already, mistrustful, that we already had trouble. As soon as they started interacting with Jesus, they would trust him. Even if they already didn't like me or trust me, as soon as they interact with Jesus, just as you guys all know, I mean, when it's the real Jesus, like your spirit, your intuition, your whole right hemisphere that's built to, are you lying? Are you telling the truth? Do you respect me? All that stuff. Every bit of spiritual and psychological intuitive radar looks at Jesus and says, oh, he just feels, I trust him. So real short little, like, if you were going to do any kind of work cross-culturally, whether it was with an inner city group that's totally different than you, racial group that's different than you, international group that's different than you, socioeconomic group, I mean, any one of 10 different ways, if you're working with a group that's dramatically different than you with cultural or language issues, to figure out every possible way to get the living presence of Jesus into the middle of it, and you get out as much as possible, and you help the person interact with Jesus, to me that's just like, once you get it, you're like, That's a no-brainer, right? So, written version of what I just said is on the website.